Today is the 4th of July 2018. It's 11 o'clock. I'm just reporting back. I've just returned from Germany and I had to go and buy more shielding because they were shooting through the walls of this metal shed that I'm sitting in. So you can see the walls there. And I also found out today they broke into my flat. So I sleep in the shed, but when I went outside, I realized that they had swapped around items in my bathroom in a way that I would have never done. So they have been in my bathroom, they have been in my flat while I was sleeping, and I think this was possible. I'm not sure if I left it open. I really can't remember. I don't actually remember leaving it open, but the kitchen balcony door was wide open in the morning. And they either broke in from the outside, which they can also do, or else I left it open, but they came up to the first floor or they came through the front door. I don't know. I don't know. Both are possible. I have kind of big boxes blocking the front door, but then again, you can probably put like metal under it and kind of like try to pull it out. I have no idea how they do it, but I'm sure they can do it. So anyway, there was a break-in into my home while I was sleeping, and I actually went to sleep at 12 o'clock and I woke up at 5 o'clock, so from midday to 5 p.m. because I was tortured all night long. Then I went into my car and I discovered that they had broken into my car while it was in the garage. I opened the glove box and there were dried leaves in the glove box. I filmed that. So I'm 100% sure that there were no dried leaves there because number one, there's no way for dried leaves to end up in the glove box. There's absolutely no way. I don't throw stuff like that in there. But secondly, also the last person to actually look at the glove box together with me in my presence was a friend of mine who is hyper cleanly. So any sort of rubbish, filth, or anything, she would pick up and, politely complain about it and ensure that I get rid of it. And we I remember, we rummaged through the entire glove box because I was looking for diesel gloves and there were no leaves there. So again, this is evidence for break-in. And this putting of dry leaves and twigs and stuff like that, either on the windscreen when there are no trees around or actually inside your car, between the seats or on your seat, you find dry twigs or leaves. That is typical for these Secret Service terror networks and the Masonic symbolism that they are using. And the first person to tell me about stuff like that was actually Melanie last October. That was the first time I experienced the twig harassment, as I call it, because I went back to my car and on the windscreen trapped was a fairly big piece of pine tree, and there were no pine trees around. So, that was placed there and actually clamped under the windscreen wipers. And when I mentioned that to Melanie, she said, yes, they do that all the time. They break into your car or they put something on your car demonstratively that they have been there, they interfered with your life. So now this breaking into my car actually happened inside the garage in a locked car. So of course they can access the garage and of course they can, they've got second keys to my car. So now they broke into the car again. So this is the car break-in, a house break-in that I discovered today. Then I drove to Constance to buy the shielding in Germany because it's cheaper. And on the way there, my headships were tortured nonstop from the cars around me. And then on a strip of motorway where there was only a single car behind me, and actually fairly large distance of about, I would say, 100 meters or something, that car actually fired an extremely hard shot and it felt like it went straight through my skull. So it was a really hard shot and I felt a knock on the back of my skull. So the impulse felt like it's woof from behind. Because there's energy, such an energy in these systems. When they deposit energy in you, they deposit an impulse, they impart an impulse. And from the impulse, you can tell what direction the shot was coming from. So there was no car in front of me. There was one single gray car behind me. And I thought, okay, that must have been them. So I stepped on the brakes and I waited for this car. And of course, the car was filled with two young women, very young and very, very, how to put it, honeypot material, shall we say. So the women who work for these secret services, they are basically selected to also be run as honeypots or be used as whores. So they look like whores, okay? So I just stopped and I thought, oh, what coincidence, what are the statistical chances with a random distribution of, female looks to find two women that look like prostitutes in a car that just happened to have fired an electromagnetic shot at you. So the weapon is in the front of the car, I would guess. That's, I think, produced by Diehl and Rheinmetall. Those are the German arms manufacturers for sure making these electromagnetic weapons. And these ditzies probably just have to press a button on their mobile phone, so no high tech involved there. But they are training these, basically their recruits, their trainee little thugs and their trainee little whores to murder people. So that I would count that almost as an assassination attempt because, you can easily lose consciousness, and there was a hard shot being fired through my skull. As soon as I stepped on the brakes and I slowed down so that I could actually see their number plate, two cars, handler cars, I would say, immediately swarmed. So they came out of nowhere. One overtook and went first up to be level with them. And I think they kind of exchanged glances or something, or there was some sort of control, gaze, or I don't know what. Okay. So they were level for a long time, even though they came out of nowhere, accelerated really fast to be right around us. So they swarmed us. One was behind us and one next to the two young women. So both cars that were swarming were white. And Ramola pointed out the UN cars, but I think white is also being used and distributed amongst the criminal network as a kind of signaling thing. And then you can stick on any sort of UN sticker that you want really quickly later. So this is why they're now spread white cars absolutely everywhere. White in Europe used to be a very rare color, but now you see it absolutely everywhere. And this happened within the last 6 months. So it just went bam. And I think a lot of these white cars are actually owned and given to cartel members. So this entire scene with the hard headshots. So I get pulsed nonstop and my head chips are being worked from cars in front of me and behind me and around me. But actual hard shots, I think it was a sniping shot, and these little Nazi whores had to wait until they had a clean sight, and then they were practicing shooting at me. So there was no car in front of me. They waited until it was just them and me on the track, and I was at a very far distance so that the backscatter wouldn't necessarily hurt them. And then they had to aim and actually shoot me in the head from behind, and that's what they did. And as soon as they got caught and I caught up with them, their handlers swarmed. So those were two cars. I think one was certainly driven by a single male. No, I think I remember both were driven by single males, something like in their 50s. So kind of thuggish looking. I don't know. Okay. So you have this kind of like, I call them the leching old fart generation that really enjoys the hunt and the perving and the voyeurism. And then you have this extremely young generation of early 20s, late teens of absolutely moronic little slappers and complete thugs. So that's the pattern I see over and over and over. And that's what it was today. So in this headshot, the other thing that I also noticed is that we were driving straight towards the German border. As soon as I filmed the women and, was trying to film one set of handlers, they kind of like disappeared off the map and drove off. The other handler followed me all the way and then in the end drove off the motorway just at the very last exit on the motorway before Germany to stay in Switzerland. So that was, I think, a TG number plate. So, but anyway, that was also typical. So we're driving towards, Germany, and then they go off into pretty much nowhere just before the German border, because the motorway actually ends in a roundabout already, going towards the German side. So, with the border guards visible and being able to monitor the cars. But anyway, so I've got now a massive headache because of the non-stop assaults. Now, inside Germany, I was gang stalked in the shops. There was already a reception group of very young gang stalking thugs. Inside the DIY store where I bought the metal shielding, there were senior thugs, again, men in their 50s, absolutely, yeah. One guy was already waiting demonstratively waiting next to the shelf. He ended up then demonstratively walking past me without having bought anything at the till later. The other one was kind of like swarming and gang stalking and going around in circles where I was. And then he disappeared when I went off somewhere. And I was about to film him. He just, scurried off. But then as I was going towards the till, he arranged it such that he would go to the till in front of me and literally end up right in front of me, so that I had to stare at him, so that I filmed him as well. But it was basically these people, these two men came extremely close to me. As I was packing the shielding onto my trolley, imagine you have to handle, I mean, look at the actual side of the shielding, okay? This is a razor blade. It's also bent, but this is metal, okay? But the edge is like, it's like a razor blade. So I'm handling these big metal sheets on my own as a woman, right? I didn't bring gloves, stupidly. I forgot my gloves. And as I'm handling them, you've got these big, fat, thuggish looking men literally an inch away from you, just kind of like swarming and scurrying around. So disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But anyway, that's the sort of like thuggish stuff that they do, that they try to put you into a situation. It's like, oh gosh, she's handling razor blades. They love razor blades and knives and deaths and cuts and bleeding and this sort of stuff they love. And then when you're trying to just avoid exactly cutting your finger off, then they kind of like swarm and they bring these thugs in to just, create even more sort of, yeah, discomfort. But anyway, so that was that. And then as I went outside and I started packing these metal shields inside my car, a gang stalker actually came up to my car and was pretending he was, actually waiting for somebody to come out of the shop, but the shop had closed. So I was one of the last people to actually go through the exit. Because I arrived so late and the shop was closed. So this gang stalker was just standing there pretending to wait for somebody from an empty shop. It was absolutely nonsensical. And then I filmed him. He was there for ages and he thought he can be there until I leave. But then I stayed there. Instead, I filmed him. And eventually I could see that he made a phone call and he had to get one of the other gang stalkers to arrange and put up some sort of, probable, what's it called? Probable deniability. No, it's not probable. It's the improbable deniability. So, the improbable deniability scenario was that the guy came and they pretended to have some sort of meeting sitting outside a DIY store with a massive industrial car park just on some benches that, the DIY store owned. Like no one in their right mind arranges a meeting at a closed DIY store in the car park to sit on their outdoor benches. So that was total garbage. So anyway, I went inside the next shop and I did some supermarket shopping. And again, when I came out, the car next to me was a gang stalking car, and right opposite the entrance there was somebody sitting in the car park on the floor watching the entrance. So I had to film that as well. But this is basically the non-stop terror, and you have this non-stop stuff around you. So that's that. And then, that was my day basically, with also repeated shots to the head on the drive back. But now I'm here. As soon as I put up the paneling, I could hear hard shots against this thing. So now it kind of calmed down and I have to wait, when they fire up. But I'm just absolutely exhausted. I'm just absolutely out of it. And I cannot tell you how many shots through the head I received from this criminal network today. So that's it. It's 11:15 p.m. on the 4th of July, 2018. This is my Holocaust log and my update. And I'm now sitting down at 11 p.m. to do some work. And I hope tomorrow on Technoforum I can actually give you an update about stuff.